See this automation on every single word. Okay, I like to mix like this because that way when I'm feeding my vocal processors, let's say a compressor, it's getting fed a consistent level. It's not getting a huge vocal note just poking out and making everything duck. It's a consistent gain. What if I told you you could write this in automatically? And then after the fact, if you want, you can tweak those automations afterwards. But this means no more tedious looping and doing passes for each channel going back and forth. It's possible. I've actually figured out how to do it, but what's super funny about this plugin, which I'm using, has been out for over 8 years and the feature is slept on. So here is Love Language by CD. This is the verse here. And when I originally mixed this, every single word on the clip gain, I was automating up or down, automating up or down, depending if something was too loud or too soft. Let me just play this back and then I'm going to show you how I'm setting it up now, which is nowhere near as tedious.
What you need a dictionary to spell it out, make it clear like Pictionary. I'll provide through the digits necessary. Name your style, we can do it auditory. No excuse to ignore me now.
Beautiful. Okay, that's every single line done. But now, woof, we're not doing that. We are not doing that at all. Now, we are not doing that anymore. We are using this plugin Vocal Writer. And yeah, you've seen it and you've probably got pros and cons. You like it, you don't like it, but you're going to love it. You will love it after this. Here, see this automation? This is where people lose it. Okay, nobody talks about how to dial this in perfectly. And it took me a little while to get this, even though I showed in the previous video me using it. Had to go back to the manual, had to rethink how I was doing this. So what you're going to do is we're going to put this in playlist mode. And what I've cut up is I've cut up the loudest section of this phrase, or the loudest word of this phrase, and the softest word of this phrase. And this is how I can clinically and repeatedly do this from one track to the next and get consistent results. So what we're going to do is we're going to loop this section here. We better turn Vocal Writer off so it doesn't affect it. Going to loop it and just take the measurement for the overall loudness of that phrase. Okay, so I've got that there. We'll solo that, and let's have a listen to this phrase here. So the difference between the loudest and the softest word is about 7.8 or 8 decibels. So what does this mean? How do I set this up here? Well, what I've learned is that it's easier to gain down into, so what this is the idle marker. So it's easier to have the idle marker below 0, I don't know why, and gain down from the middle rather than try and both gain up and down. So what I tend to do with this is I set the range so the top is at 0, so everything that is at 0 stays at 0. The bottom of the range becomes -8, and this marker should be at -4, which is right in the middle, okay? So that's how we set the start of it up, okay? That's really important. Next is we're going to loop this loudest phrase here, and we're going to maneuver this target until the gain reduction rider here hits -8. Okay, that's important. It has to use the full amount of gain reduction over the loudest phrase, and that is the loudest phrase. So let's play this and aim by moving this target around to get it down on that loudest phrase. And I just tend to use fast mode because, especially with pop music, I just like having faster fader rides.
Name your style, we can do it all. Name your style, we can do it all. Name your
I'm just going to loop that louder section there.
style, we 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 style, we
It's in 7.9, so it's right up against the ceiling on that loudest phrase. And now when we play this softer phrase, it should be boosting up. So that's the softer phrase there. Perfect, and it's boosting the softer phrase up 3.4 decibels. So I'm actually closing that gap with these fader automations. So once you have that set up, okay, now this isn't the final way we set it up, but just follow along here. What we're going to do is we're going to click Write Automation, enable automation on the fader, go through to Vocal Writer, fader, which is there, and we're just going to play this through.
What you need a dictionary.
And it does nothing. You know why? Because you're going to be in latch mode, okay? Let's press play again.
What you need a dictionary to spell it out, make it clear like Pictionary. I'll provide, do the dishes necessary. Name your style, we can do it auditory. No excuse to ignore me now.
Beautiful. So we've got all that automation written in there. Now, after the fact, if there are a few words you don't like, you can just go in and go, ooh, it's getting a bit dicey. It's getting a bit loud over here on the tail. Let's just cut that out. Boom, done. And you can just quickly edit those automations, but this is just a clip gain. Then what we do is we put this back in read. But the magic of this is instead of having to loop every channel, you can set the vocal rider up pretty quickly and then do one playthrough of the whole track with the vocal rider on having an instance on each channel. So now when I feed my compressors, I've got everything automated here. Now you can change the range here so you have a greater amount of control or a less amount of control. Like you could, instead of having the range 8 decibels, you could have it 4 decibels, so to speak. So you got 2 decibels up, 2 decibels down, and you can manipulate it in that sense. But for me, what's great about this is now when I feed my CLA 76, when I feed my whole vocal chain, I am getting an accurate level going into it, okay? There is a little bonus sort of point. Now, I've sort of fielded around with this a little bit with background vocals, but that is you can actually set the input to the instrumental up here and then trigger the threshold. So you can actually trigger the target level off the input, the sidechain input. So that way you can balance how much volume do you want against the music. So you can change the threshold of the music, which is really funny. So that basically what it's doing is, I'm sort of blabbing on a bit there, is if the instrumental's really loud, it's going to, and you want the music to be softer than the vocal or vice versa. I don't know, if you've got more music feeding it, the target is higher. What it's going to do is it's going to say, oh, there's a lot of music here. There's a lot of instrumental. We're going to actually ride the vocal up a lot more. So it's actually going to ignore a lot of the overall volume changes in the vocal channel itself and focus on side chaining from the instrumental. It's an interesting concept. I've done it on backing vocals pretty successfully. I still have to workshop it a little bit more before I show you and say this is a tried and tested. I've been using this for a while. This, however, I have been using on the last 3 mixes I've done this week, as in before I started my vocal processing, done all my automation like this, and it has worked exceptionally well. So steal it, have it. This is yours. Take it to the bank. I know it's a Waves plugin. I know it's an old plugin. I know you might have your own way of doing it. You might say it's lazy, but I don't care because it works for me and it works wonderfully well. And if you're sleeping on it, hey, not my problem. I enjoy it. Another person's going to enjoy it. So let's rock and roll. Take care.